Hi, this is Sherry. Welcome to my journey in clay. Today we are going to make an olive tray. Actually, I'm going to make two olive trays, but I'm going to break it out into two separate videos to keep it from being too long. The first one, I want to try an oval shaped olive tray. And then the second one, I want it more rectangular. I'm not really sure exactly how it's going to go yet, but we'll be doing it together. So let's get started. For the oval shape, I have a wooden plaque that I got at Michael's, and I'm going to use that to make the oval shape for the clay. But first I need a pattern because I need to make the clay just a little bit larger than the shape of the actual plaque. I'm going to cut it about 1 inch. I'm just going to go ahead and freehand it here about 1 inch all the way around. We'll see how that goes. I've already started with a piece of clay that I rolled earlier. It's still very soft though. I'm going to try rolling it a little bit thinner. It's a little bit too thick. Right now I have these sides set for 1/4 inch, which really should be okay, but I feel like could be just a little bit thinner. So I'm going to take these sides off and set it for, I think it's 1/6 of an inch rather than 1/4 inch. So go ahead and roll this out, get it a little bit thinner. You can use any kind of a rolling pin, really. I just happen to have finally bought one of these to see if it really works. And honestly, I have mixed feelings on it. It works a lot of times, but frequently I have to get my old roller out and finish things up. So I don't know. All right, let's see. That looks like it'll be enough. I'll go ahead and get my tool and smooth it out to get all the lines out. I'm going to go ahead and flip it over, get the other side. Now when I go ahead and I clean up this part and smooth it out, it's going to leave a little bit of texture on the bottom where it's against the board there, but it won't be too much. Well, looks like it is not going to be enough. So either I can get another piece of clay and get started, or I can just cut it a little thinner, which that's what I've decided to do. So instead of 1 inch, I have like maybe a little over 1/2 inch, and that's going to work. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut the shape. I probably have mentioned this before, but if this is the first time you're watching a hand building video, I'm careful to keep my knife straight up so that I don't get beveled edges unintentionally. So we'll set these clay scraps aside, lift up our little template here. I want to go ahead and smooth the edges. I have some plastic wrap here. You can use your fingers. I like to use the plastic wrap. It doesn't seem to, I don't know, it doesn't seem to catch as much, I guess, as your fingers do. Sometimes the fingers will catch a piece of clay and mess it up a little bit. So I really like using the plastic wrap. So we'll go all around those edges, smoothing them out. Next step is the fun part. So I'm getting my foam out. My foam is it's close to 2 inches. It's nice and thick. You could use a little, doesn't have to be quite that thick, but it can't be too thin either. It's got to be at least 1 inch, 1.5 inches. So I'm going to smooth my edges one more time because it seems like you can never get them smooth enough. Then I'm going to take my wooden plaque here and I'm going to center it. It doesn't look centered here, but it is centered. It's just the angle of the camera, I guess. And then I'm just going to push down, wiggle it a little bit. The clay does not really stick to the wood, so it should release fairly easily. So I don't need to coat the wood with anything. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to go ahead and put my initials, sign it, while I'm thinking about it. You don't really have to do that at this point, but figured I might as well. Now we're going to get a wear board with some newspaper on top of it to keep it from sticking. Try to get this wood out one more time. Just if you keep gently prying it, it will come out. Trying to be patient here. There we go. So now we have our oval shape, and it's got a little rim all the way around it. I think this is good. Edges are smooth. So the next thing we want to do is we want to make our little indentations for our olives. I have two different size balls here. I have a big one. I don't really know where I got that silver ball, but I've got it from somewhere, and I have a marble. Both of them will make about the same size indentation, but using that great big one, I have a harder time seeing exactly where the shape is going, exactly where I'm making that indentation. Seems to be a little bit easier with the marbles. So I'm going to put some plastic wrap on my piece here because the marble is glass and it will definitely stick. And the plastic will keep that from happening. So I'm just sort of deciding as I go where I want to make these little indentations, see how many fit. You can see I'm putting the marble in, and then I'm rolling it around a little bit to make it a little bit wider than the actual marble. Okay, this looks pretty good. Just sort of checking to make sure that I shouldn't make another indentation there, but this looks about right. Peeling the plastic off, we'll see how it looks. Looks like enough, I think. I don't think we can really fit any more on there. Looks a little bit plain to me though. The rim there, I could make something on it, you know, when I glaze it, but I decided instead to go ahead and do a little carving around the whole perimeter here. So what I usually do is I'm going to go ahead and get my Lazy Susan thing to make it easier while I do this. I start by making a little mark. Well, it's not really a mark. This is the bevel that I'm making in here on each end. And then I go around from there, like the center of each one. So I'll do the center of these two, go around, make the center in each of those, see how that looks, and then decide if I need any more, which I did decide I needed some more. So this is just a little loop tool. And I think that makes it look a little, I don't know, a little fancier. Gives it a little more interest, I think. Be to put a foot on the bottom of this. So to do that, we're going to flip it over, but I'm going to put a little bit of plastic in here, and then I'm going to take our wood plaque and turn it over. First, I'm going to get another board here so that we have something to flip it over on. Then we'll just flip this over. Take off that board, the newspaper, and then we are ready to make a little foot around the bottom of this. You don't have to have a foot on it, but it looks a little bit nicer to have a foot on it. Elevates it a little bit. So this is the scrap clay that I had earlier that I've wedged. You can just use another piece of clay, doesn't matter. I just happened to be able to wedge that while it was still plenty soft, so might as well use that. I'm going to roll this out flat. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and put my 1/4 inch back on so that it's a little bit thicker. I don't want that foot to be, I don't want it too big, obviously, but I don't want it thin and too flat. So we're going to roll this clay out Oh, looks like I got a little air bubble in there, but we'll roll that right out. Also notice when I'm rolling the clay, I sort of pick it up a little bit before I get to that end, because otherwise it'll sometimes flip onto the dowel, which is not terrible, but it's not good for it to bend like that. So we want to go ahead and smooth this. Have to sponge my tool off as usual. It gets that little bit, the clay just seems to gravitate towards it. So we'll smooth both sides. Now the tool I'm going to use here, I bought, and I do like it. I tried making do with a corn cob holder, but it didn't really work, even though, I gave it a good shot. So we just press this down and go cut it, set that aside. Sometimes it doesn't quite cut it cleanly on the side, but this time it did, so I'm able to just pick that up. If you don't have to have one of these tools, you also can just use a ruler and mark it along each side about 1/4 of an inch or so. So I have both of these. They're little ragged on the edges here. So to smooth them, I smooth them before I apply, and I'll keep them straight and then put the ruler against it, and that way it keeps the piece from distorting, because otherwise, you press the plastic against it and it'll start moving around a little bit. We'll do that with our other piece here too, the other side. And it doesn't need a lot, just the 1 or 2, go-bys, and that'll work. All right, I'm going to go ahead and sort of loop these around to start getting them in shape. Now I'm trying to decide if this is how much of these 2 pieces we're going to need to fit on the bottom of this. So I have a round shape here, which looks about right. So I'm going to sort of fit my 2 pieces to the outside of this circle, and that'll help me gauge it. Push that down a little bit. And then do the same thing for the one on the other side. All right, I think that's good. One more time. That one's just a little askew. So we're going to do the usual of scratching the clay for where we're going to attach it. I'm going to scratch both sides here. I'm going to get my circle again to try to get an idea of where I want to scratch this. I don't want it too close. I want it close to the edge, but not too close. It needs some space. This looks about right. I'm going to take my scratching tool and just scratch around. Now I may take it down a little bit further when it's time to attach it, but I can do that easily after the fact. Well, after I place them, not after I actually attach them. We'll get the other side too. Move that aside and get my 2 pieces and scratch the bottom of those. At this point, the clay is pretty soft. Even if it were a little bit harder, it would be fine. You could, not leather hard, maybe a little bit before leather hard. Sometimes I'll take these 2 pieces that I'm going to use for the foot and sort of set them aside for a little bit to set up just a little bit. But in this case, there's no need to, because we have the support underneath of this oval shape, so that pushing down on it is not going to hurt it. Little bits of clay, as I said, seem to just fly around. We're gonna double check this, see how it works. This piece that I have is I need to make sure that the bottom of it is flat against the, uh, the piece because it has a tendency, it's not exactly, it's not round, but it has a tendency to sort of move a little bit. So I'm gonna mark where it should be at about the halfway point. And then I'm gonna go ahead and cut this piece that I'm gonna apply. I'm gonna cut it at just a little bit of an angle, so it's not straight down, but sort of slanted towards me. And then for the other side, rather than measure it, I should be able to just do the same thing here, mark the end of it, and then in this case, I'm gonna slant it away from me a little bit because I'm doing it upside down. All right, everything is scratched. I'm gonna get my vinegar, another little piece of clay. I don't like this little white piece of clay that's on it. All right, off. A little more scratching. And then I'm gonna do my vinegar, attach my top piece. Doesn't matter which you attach first, but it just feels right to me to attach that top piece first. Now I'm just gently pressing it down here. I'm not pressing it too hard because even though the wood is underneath, I don't want it to press those little circles either, distort those. So vinegar the other side and attach that. Now you see that these ends don't exactly meet, and that is intentional. I like to leave just a little bit of space on either side, depending on the piece where I leave the space. But if you if this does go in the dishwasher, then if you have that little bit of space, then the water uh, goes out, drains out, rather than getting stuck in the middle. So I'm going to take this little circle shape that I have because I could do the whole thing with my hands or, cut it first and then smooth it. But this circle makes a nice line on either side. So I'm just holding it as I press it to make sure it doesn't push all the way through. And then I'm just going to smooth all of the sides. Again, using the plastic, rubbing, I'm just pushing down gently here just to make sure that it's adhering. And then I'm going to try and smooth out these little seams a little bit more. I really like using my hand to smooth the seams, but since it's hard to get in that tiny little space, so I end up using this tool to smooth it a little. Okay, a little bit more. All right, and then smooth that opening a little bit one more time. You want to make sure that's not sharp. You can always sand it a little bit after you fire it if you didn't get it smooth enough, but I like to get it as smooth as possible in the beginning. So we're going to go ahead and do the same flipperoonie there. And here we have our finished, well, sort of finished piece. It's almost finished. You can see I did poke through some of those holes, did come through a little bit. So I'm going to put the plastic on and take my my marble and go over them just a little bit more. I'm not really making them any deeper or anything. I'm not making any new ones. I'm really just making sure that the ones that are there are smooth. Couple more. All right, almost done. There we go. Okay. Now all we need is an olive. So my idea for this olive tray is to put one olive in the tray, like not a real one, obviously, but a clay olive. And honestly, I don't remember. It feels like I had this idea myself, but for all I know, I could have seen it somewhere and it stayed in my head and I thought it was my own idea. But anyway, so I'm going to take some white clay. You don't have to use white clay. I'm just going to use the white clay because I happen to have it and I know that the glaze will look really nice on it. I have some seaweed glaze that I know is going to be just the right color of green. So I'm going to make two here. I'm only going to put one olive in the tray, but I usually, when I can, make two of something in case something happens to one of them. I have some red clay here. Well, it's clay that I have, white clay that I have put some red stain in. I'll put that in the description. I don't remember exactly what I used to color it anymore, but I colored it red. And you don't need to worry about this either because this is for the little pimento, obviously. You can just glaze it red. In fact, even though I'm using this red clay, it's not super bright, and so I will do the same thing when I glaze it. I'll put a little bit of red glaze on it. So we're going to make first we're going to cut the clay, the red clay for the two little pimentos for each of the olives. Smooth off that end a little bit. Tap it down there, that helps too. Then I'm going to take the end of a paintbrush. This paintbrush is about the right size. I'm going to make a little hole in the olive, well, in the piece of clay that's going to look like an olive, and just take that paintbrush and circle it around a little bit to make sure that the hole is big enough for the pimento. Then I'm going to do a little bit of scratching in here just to make sure. Put a little bit of vinegar in there, and then we're going to pop that pimento in. Push it just a little. Okay, that looks good. I'm going to do the same thing with this other little ball of clay. Even if you don't have the white clay, if you just use your regular clay, you do want to just keep rolling it to make sure it's nice and smooth, because you don't want any little cracks in it, and that's easy to happen. I'm going to use the same technique here. Put our paintbrush in, circle it around. Little scratching, almost forgot to scratch, a little scratching, and some vinegar. And we'll see how this one fits. Okay, there we go. Two little olives. Here we go. I'm not going to fire the olive with the plate. I'm going to fire it separately for the beginning. Then when I glaze it, I will put it on the plate and glaze it. Thanks for watching.